we're seeing now with the digital ID now. They just rolled out GC Wallet, whatever they want to call it. And the people that are going to have to, people that they're trying this out on are people who are claiming old age security, people that are claiming EI, people who are, again, the most vulnerable, who need the cash, need it to live, but you can't do it unless you have a digital ID. And so this is how they're going to slow roll this out to the population so that it gets normalized. And so when it gets to the more larger swaths of people, it's like, well, if this has been happening already for 2 years, you see, that's the argument they make every time. Oh, it's already been happening for some time. Look, it's all fine now. Just accept it. And that's kind of how they're looking to do this.
Josh Udall, it is a pleasure to talk to you, my brother. How you doing, man?
Doing good, brother. Doing good. Cannot complain. Life's good, man. How you holding up?
Dude, I'm, getting by, man. Year is winding down. You're the perfect guy for this episode because so much has happened this year, man. And it feels like every year a lot happens, but this year specifically feels significant because, to me at least, it feels like the power structures in Canada and around the world just stopped caring, stopped hiding stuff. It really feels like this was the year where everything started to roll out, and there was no attempt to, redress certain terms and phrases. It was just right there in your face. Digital ID, for example. I mean, we saw Keir Starmer in the last half of this year. I swear, I followed him on X just to count the number of posts that he puts out on digital ID. Every post for a 2-month period was digital ID.
Dude, man, he's a greasy car salesman. He knows how to do it.
Well, I mean, dude, for forever, you and I and thousands, if not millions of other people were alt-right Nazi podcasters for talking about the digital ID, right? We're New World Order, Alex Jones, tinfoil hat freaks. And then now here we are. So you've done some coverage on this on Elev8, and let's just jump right into it. What have you discovered in terms of Canada's relationship to the digital ID and where we are at with this whole experiment?
We are much further along than we even realize that we are. The Canadian government has been doing a lot of backroom deals and backroom conversations with different providers and different mechanisms to bring this in. And I was listening to a couple different conversations and interviews about it, and how, again, you brought it up there with Keir Starmer. The UK just said, yeah, we're just going to do it. 2029, that's when it's happening. And they've received a lot of pushback on it. And you see, as you said, Keir Starmer keeps pushing it, trying to convince you, maybe, just maybe, look how awesome this could be for you. And people are just like, nah, screw you, dude. Where Canada's taking note. They've realized, okay, we really screwed up in COVID. We really let the cat out of the bag during the convoy. People really don't trust us any longer. We just outright froze people's bank accounts, and people don't trust us as much as they once did. So how do we do this? Well, let's go after the population that's the most vulnerable. Those who can't say no, but must work with us immediately in order for them to get services. And that's what they've been doing. We're seeing here with automatic tax filing, with people who are at a specific income barrier or income threshold, who are just like, yeah, we'll do it for you. Don't worry. We just want to make sure you can access your benefits. So that's one. We're seeing now with the digital ID now. They just rolled out GC Wallet, whatever they want to call it. And the people that are going to have to, people that they're trying this out on are people who are claiming old age security, people that are claiming EI, people who are, again, the most vulnerable, who need the cash, need it to live, but you can't do it unless you have a digital ID. And so this is how they're going to slow roll this out to the population so that it gets normalized. And so when it gets to the more larger swaths of people, it's like, well, if this has been happening already for 2 years, you see, that's the argument they make every time. Oh, it's already been happening for some time. Look, it's all fine now. Just accept it. And that's kind of how they're looking to do this.
Yeah. And I was reading this morning that Canada and the EU recently entered into a deal that would make our digital IDs interoperable.
Yes.
So that means, for people watching this, if you live in Canada and you have a digital ID, you can travel to Europe and your digital ID will be in effect there. So it operates as a passport. Mm-hmm. So, once again, the alt-right conspiracy theorist podcasters screaming New World Order were right.
Yeah. I can already hear Hulk Hogan, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash. I can hear it. NWO, baby. Yes, I 100%. Like, it's been very wild to, and I'm sure you've experienced this firsthand yourself, where you're just like, hey, I don't want to sound crazy, but I came across some articles, I came across some literature that they're pushing these different things. You're crazy. You're nuts. And it's like, that's not me saying it. I'm like, they'll 100%. They love, the left loves doing this, where they tell you, oh, another Alex Jones, just yelling about the frogs being gay, are you? You know, that's kind of what they'll throw at you. And you're just like, sure, okay, you can say that. However, I'm literally showing you articles and bodies of people that your politicians have joined and talked to and done interviews with and championed and bragged about. And this is what they've been saying, and that's not weird to you. There's no questions about it. I bring it back to a guest I had a couple of weeks ago, Amanda Galbraith, and she really hit the nail on the head. And as stupid as it is she's like, let's play the game. What if a conservative said it? And anything the liberals do, just ask the question, what if a conservative said that? What would be the fallout from it? The media would be all over it. It would be the next, the end of the world. But here it just gets covered up. You're crazy. Shut up. Move on. It's kind of rough to watch, to be honest.
Yeah. And, it's strange to me is how this is all coming down. Well, it's not strange, but, in recent history, the left were the anti-authority group. That's where I come from. That's where I started, right? I became politically active in the early 2000s after 9/11 because I saw what the neoconservative right was doing, and it was egregious and disgusting.
But so you weren't for the war in Iraq?
I was not a fan, no.
Dude, I'll be honest with you. That really shows your strength of intellect. That was such a pervading narrative that everyone was on board with. And the fact that you went against the grain at that point in time where technology was, that took a lot of guts, man. I congratulate you for that.
Oh, thank you, dude. Well, I mean, I got my first gig working as a columnist for a now defunct publication called Refined Hype, which was a music and culture publication. And I became like the resident political writer at the ripe old age of 20 years old. How anybody cared what a 20-year-old had to say, I have no idea. But I saw the writing on the wall right off the bat. I'll never forget it. That morning, my mom was watching the TV, and I came in the house and I walked upstairs and I saw the second plane hit the second tower as I walked in. And my mom was, I think like the rest of the world, everybody was in total shock. And I said, we're going to Iraq. I knew it right off the bat. I knew that this was how this was going to play out. That I wasn't necessarily on the 9/11 was an inside job side of things. I didn't go that far, but I knew that would be used as a pretext to invade Iraq, because I knew Bush Jr. wanted to finish the job that Bush Sr. wasn't able to accomplish, which was to depose Saddam Hussein. Right. So anyways, point is that I was on the left because I saw that the left were the good guys at the time. And what's strange to me now is that there's been this huge political realignment where the left, through what people refer to as woke, but which is really, Jordan Peterson did the best way of describing it, called it postmodern neo-Marxism. I call it Chinese communism because that's what it really is. Yeah, True. We can get into that too if you want, but they slid into this very extreme radical left authoritarian side. Now, the conservative right has become, strangely, the detractors, the dissenters, right? Which is where, like myself personally, I'm right in the middle with my politics. I've been doing what I do long enough to know that they're all fucking scumbags. But in terms of ideology and just the way people think, I find myself more aligned with libertarians and conservatives now more than ever, which is strange for a guy like me who came from the left and moved toward the middle as the left became more radical. And so, Josh, in your estimation, why is this coming down through the Liberal Party? Was it Justin Trudeau, or do you see this as being something, this form of authoritarianism as being something that's always been baked into that party?
I truly believe, well, like, there's so much that goes back into it, right? It's like I see it as ebbs and flows. I see it as initially being ushered in the Liberal Party under Pierre Trudeau. Where, the WTC, the World Trade Organization, or WTO, sorry, World Trade Organization recognized China coming in. And man, Pierre got real cozy up to China immediately as soon as he could. Everyone hated him. He eventually got kicked out, this, that, the other, and we kind of move on with our lives. And, there was, again, ebbs and flows. You move in, move out. It was pretty generic politics for the most part as you move in through the 90s, early 2000s, Stephen Harper, all of that. Then Justin Trudeau comes into play, and, well, it's Pierre's son. Give him a shot. All he was a drama teacher, right? He could do this. Yeah, sure.
Snowboard instructor.
Oh, sorry, my fault. My bad. Yeah. I heard he loves the snow. You get what I mean? So that was, that's what came in. And, you saw it during this. I remember immediately the red flags went out. And as soon as he was during that little, it was maybe 50 people in the audience saying, wow, I really, really like the basic dictatorship of China. And we're all like, this guy just say that? That's insane. And then that really should have been the red flag for everybody else. Like, this is what you're going to get. And that's kind of what the type of politics that Trudeau kind of injected into the party. He brought people around him like that, where it was all about social politics, identity politics, woke, whatever you want to call it. It was all became about how you look, how you feel. And we're just going to pump money. And we're just going to move. We're just going to run the credit card up the country as if there's no balance on it, because that's how he was raised. He wasn't raised on any consequences. He was raised on daddy's money and how he made all his money, and knew that I would just have it. And so I think that's kind of what we're currently seeing. And so he's injected it so much in that party, and they see how, whoa, if we tap into identity politics, we can control people, because no one likes being called a racist, right? So immediately if they come against us, just call them a bigot. Just call them you hate homosexuals, right? They'll throw all that, and they realize how much that can control people and it's what I'm looking for, stymie them.
Yeah. And
that's what we've seen with the Conservative Party, and then with conservatives in general, where there have always been, we heard it best. I've heard it best from, what's his face, spacing his name, based out of the States though. And he's a commentator, and he says, Republicans are just the Democrat Party going the speed limit. And conservatives typically are just speed bumps for the Liberal Party up here. And that's always kind of how it's been. And in its nature, that's kind of how it works. Conservatism is just conserving what you have. There's not a whole lot of proactivism behind conservatism, unfortunately. And that's kind of like they've had to change their mentality and their playbook, because, well, liberals at this point have worked in such a way they're a bad faith party now. They do not operate in good faith. And our whole system here in Canada is based on good faith. The checks and balances aren't there to really check fascistic people, people who are trying to abuse the system. It's just not there. And we've seen so many instances of like, oh, we probably should have something in place to deal with that. We should probably have something in place to deal with that. As Trudeau kept operating, now Carney is doing the same thing, where they're just exploiting our system for everything it's worth, and they're holding on to power. That's why they've been in power for 10 years. And I love that's the comeback, and understandably so. Well, you guys are losers. You guys can't beat us. We've been around for 10 years, baby, and you can't displace us. And it's like, I come from a sports background. I get it. It's like sometimes it's like, yeah, you kind of have to take it. You haven't beat them, so that's just the reality. But they do so in such a slimy way that's how they hold on to power, is they're very dishonest in the process. And that's the kind of thing I've talked to Poilievre about this at various points, is I'm like, I hope you're taking note of everything that has happened, and I will be putting pressure on you to close those loopholes once you get into power, because we cannot ever let this ever happen again.
I really appreciate you saying that, because, see, my concern is this. We're going to get a conservative government sooner or later. Mm-hmm. I estimate sooner, because I think that with the Elbows Up campaign, Mark Carney and the Liberals set the expectation too high. And not only have they not met the expectation, I mean, they have fumbled every everything every step of the way. I mean, when I was thinking about what we were going to talk about today, because I've been listening to Elev8 on repeat for like the last 24 hours, I was kind of like grabbing like talking points and like, okay, we could expand on this, this, and this. I was like, there's so much bad coming out of this government that it like you can go in any direction. You can throw a dart into the darkness and hit a subject that is going to make this current government look awful. So I suspect that whenever we get an election, you know, you can see the conservative campaign machine revving up again with Jamil Javani and all these other young conservatives rolling out and starting to do interviews and things, right? And Danielle Smith, of course, she's doing more and more interviews, who I contend is a federalist in independent clothing. She secretly wants to be the next federal conservative leader. That's my belief. But so what we're seeing is this machine starting up. We're going to get an election. I assume that we're going to at least get more conservative seats in parliament than we currently have, because I think people are tired of all of the political theater in our country and want a change. What concerns me, again, I'm taking the long way around here, is that a lot of conservative commentators appear to have jumped all the way in for the Conservative Party. And what is going to happen when we do end up with a conservative government? Are they going to be just as critical? And it makes me happy to hear you say that, because I think Elev8, you guys, what you do is so important, because you dig into like what the goings on in the House of Commons, which is something most people in our country pay zero attention to. And you highlight the things that are happening there, which things that I didn't even know. And I'm, you know, paying attention all the time. So I'm happy to hear you say that you're going to go after the conservatives in the same way that you go after the liberals should we end up with a conservative government. Like, I guess, yeah, that's my question or my statement. Like, when you see these same things pop up, I mean, do you plan to be just as skeptical of them as you are of this government?
Well, this is kind of how I operate. And this is, I'm new to the new media space, right? And I'm trying to figure this all out. And of course, right now, my focus is like, this Liberal Party's got to go. But in the meantime, something I've really wanted to establish is I really have been trying really hard to establish positive relationships in Ottawa with different federal MPs, because you can be critical. It's so easy to be critical in a good faith manner. There's a lot of people who are critical in bad faith, and there's plenty of those people out there. I'm in the headspace of I really want to develop good positive relationships with those in Ottawa, so that when they are the governing party, I want them to know from me that yes, I will be critical of them, because I want to see the country do better. I want to see the country improve. But it will be all in good faith. It's never going to be a gotcha. It's never going to be like, well, just trying to get them to essentially ruin their lives or ruin their careers. That will never be me. Never has been me. I just simply react or move depending on how you react or how you do things. So I see guys like Sean Fraser who claimed, yes, I'm here for the people, and yet you keep screwing people left, right, and center with everything you produce. Well, yes, I'm going to be very hostile towards you and how I cover what's going on. Versus when you're able to have more of these conversations and understand what a party's doing, I really am trying my best to develop good faith relationships. And so that when the day comes where it's like, that was weird, I can do so and not ruin the relationships and still be like, hey, I'm still here for you guys. Let's have a conversation. However, that was weird. Can we talk about that? And that's my plan right now, is to really build those good faith relationships. Just knowing that I will be, as long as you're operating good faith, you'll get nothing but good faith from me, whether it be positive or negative.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that, man, because what's happened with this independent media thing, whatever it is, this thing that you and I are inside of, what I see happening a lot is partisan hackery. Right? Mm-hmm. Or half-truths or manipulations of the facts, manipulations of events in order to fit whatever narrative they're trying to push. And through that process, independent media has largely become the legacy media. They're doing things the same way, right? And it's all predicated on the same advertising model, right? The more angry, the more engaged you can make people, the more you benefit monetarily. And so, I'm afraid for what the future holds in terms of our ability to communicate with each other and for the flow of information, because how much of what is out there is actually information. And, like with myself, I've been pulling back from social media, staying away from a lot of things, because I've recognized that, yes, this is just more manipulation, except it's coming from the other side, and it's coming from somebody holding a phone to their face rather than a well manicured set where they're delivering the news. It's the same thing. It's the same idea. And it's really just trying to bring in and generate as many ad dollars and as much engagement and as many clicks as possible. Right. And so, I feel like we're in a hole and we have to get out, especially in Canada. It's my podcast has a lot of American viewers, and the number one thing I hear from people who listen to this podcast is, what the fuck is happening in Canada? Like, what happened to you guys? Mm-hmm. And now we see this scenario where Mark Carney is strengthening our relationship with China. We now have this interoperable digital ID deal with the EU. We are trying to skirt the United States. But the problem we have is that we are along their border. Mm-hmm. So we are setting ourselves up for a very tumultuous period in this country, because they are going to run out of patience with us sooner or later, especially with a president like Trump. So knowing everything, that a lot of what's happening within the inner workings of our political system, what do you see going on in terms of our relationship to the United States and the constant bipartisan conflict happening within our House of Commons? Is there any thought on either side being put into our relationship with the U.S.?
So I think if I understand what you're asking clearly is how is this really going to all impact our relationship with the United States as okay? Yeah, that's fair. Well, I think the one thing that is kind of catching my eye, and this one thing that does give me faith, at least if the conservative government were to come in, is they're going to reestablish that relationship and try to reestablish more in good faith and sever ties with China. That's why China's working so hard to make sure conservatives don't get into power at this point. The issue I'm really, really disheartened by is seeing how these liberal supporters are so quick to be like, man, wouldn't it be great to be part of the EU? Let's keep deepening that relationship with the EU. I think it'd be great. Let's be a member state of the EU. And it's like, I just saw you freak out all last spring about becoming the 51st state. That's the EU is the same thing. If you become a member state, you're essentially who you vote for doesn't really matter as much as it does as a country that's autonomous. Now you have to bring in MPs to the EU member legislature, whatever it is. Then you have to, you have a president of the EU that it's a government for your government. This stinks. Why would you ever want that? But they're so easily duped. And so as we're kind of seeing right now, things are getting very out of control in our relationship with the U.S. We've seen it with the U.S. ambassador and everything he's appeared on. He's clearly lost increasing patience with Canada, and doesn't really, from my perspective, I don't know if he even knows what he wants to do and how to move forward from here. You have Carney that will show up, shake hands with Trump, and nothing much will happen except for some crazy deal at Brookfield to go take place, and then that's always awesome. But yeah, there's such a hatred towards Americans right now, and you see it online where people are bragging about how they've never been to the U.S. Since Trump got elected, just to prove a point. And it's just like, okay, I'll be honest, my wife's American. Yeah. So we visit quite often. And, America's got their own problems, don't get me wrong. But it has been very weird to me to go down to the U.S. and see things from a different perspective. And you start realizing how assaulted by our media we really are when you leave the country. And you're just like, there's just something funky about what our media apparatus is doing here. And I'll go back to your previous point of how that might be concerning in the independent space because they become so partisan focused. Is it almost feels like it's because you've had the mainstream that has taken one side, it's forced the independent space to then take their side. And now you have this whole friction that's happening. And I see why it's happening. I so badly don't want to be like that guy forever of like, we're just going to fight all the time. Liberals bad. We're going to just gloss over whatever the conservatives did over here. But you guys, liberal opposition, you need to shut up. I never want to be that. And I think this is where a lot of the issue is going to come down to is I think I'm starting to see the American administration, they're starting to shift their focus more to independent media in Canada, to start trying to build that relationship with our government. It's happening quietly, but it's just weird behavior shifts I'm starting to see from American officials. I'm like, independent media needs to really watch themselves and be cautious and make sure they operate in good faith. Because if you watched or if you read Lauren Southern's book, I thought it was fascinating, a fascinating read. She warns about this stuff. She saw it where it's like a lot of influence starts coming into the space because influencers influence people. So if you're an independent creator, well, how do you make your money? Ad money. Well, how else can you make your money? Well, if you talk about this, we'll give you some of this. You have to be very cautious, and we're seeing China does this. Every country does this, is where they will put money into influencers to manipulate hearts and minds. America's no different. Canada does this. Canada does this all the time. And America's going to start doing it with our independent space as well as these trade talks start heating up. So I think independent creators in Canada also need to keep an eye out that they don't get so caught up in being like, screw Carney, American, if just because you are on the side of like, oh, I want more of what you have, doesn't necessarily mean you are the good guy as well. You have to really make sure you're taking a stance of what is best for our country at the end of the day. So
I completely agree. And, the thing is too, is there's a lot of nuance, I talked about this on the live stream a few weeks ago, but I'll share it again here. So Brave New Normal lives mostly on Substack and X. I've every time I talk about, I've done episodes with Denis Rancourt and Robert Malone and all these people, and I get strikes. I think I'm on my fourth strike on YouTube. So I imagine that's why for people watching this, I see comments on my YouTube channel all the time. Like, why doesn't this have 1 million views? It's because I have put zero effort into YouTube. I would love to, but I am not confident my channel will survive 2026. But because my podcast is so prevalent on X, I get a lot of people in high-powered positions reaching out to me privately, mostly through my conversations with Sam, but conversations with other people as well. Recently, I had a conversation with a very top-of-the-mountain oil and gas executive in our country. Top. And on the political end, in the private sector, but on the political end. They are the people that are dealing with the Mark Carneys of the world. So we were talking about these pipelines, this memorandum of understanding between Danielle Smith. I fucking hate the memorandum of it's so Canadian and irritating. But whatever, this tentative deal, pipeline deal. And so I was asking them about it, and they said, the common misunderstanding here is that, the Liberals are very hard to deal with, but they said Mark Carney's been a dream. Like, he has done absolutely everything they've asked for. They've asked for removals of certain regulations, certain red tape to get things moving. And basically what they told me is the message from Mark Carney to his people who are communicating with the people on their end is give them whatever they want. The holdup is British Columbia and the First Nations, or the Indian bands that are stopping the pipeline from moving through their territory. That's the holdup. And really what's happened is sovereign Indian territory is coming back to bite us hard in a very bad way. And the only alternative at this point is to route a pipeline through the United States, exporting from Puget Sound in Washington state. But the problem there is that Trump is so erratic and his tariffs changed so often on a daily basis, they wouldn't even know what to bill them. They wouldn't even know what to include in the invoicing, right? So that's where we are stopped. Now, this is one person's opinion. could be that they themselves are, have their own biases and things. But the point of the matter is that there's always more to the story. And now you did a recent episode on Elev8 where you were talking about liberals opposing pipeline legislation in Parliament. Can you talk about that a little bit? Like what happened there, and what were they doing to block the legislation from going through?
So are you talking about like the recent like opposition motion?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, sorry, my mistake. Yeah,
it's all good. So yeah, like if we want to look back, we just rewind back to the day that Carney and Danielle Smith signed that MOU. Carney did the Trump, signed that up. You saw that, and you saw when afterwards the result of that was, well, Stephen Guilbeault was like, I'm out. Peace. You had different BC Liberal MPs saying this is never going to happen. You have Mark Miller, who's now the new recently added culture minister, saying, well, that day they signed that MOU is going to be the easiest day in the life of that pipeline. So you know, all these liberals saying this thing is never going to happen. Yet Carney's saying, don't worry, Danielle Smith, don't worry, Alberta, we're going to take care of you. And even the story you just shared here, Carney's just doing everything he can to make it happen on the private end. However, he does keep saying this in the House of Commons. We'll see what happens to First Nations. We'll see what happens with BC. And I've still holds my guns that he's half measures Carney, where he's going to say one thing to keep the caucus happy, the Liberal caucus happy, and then another to keep Alberta happy, keep them from leaving federation or confederation. So that's what we've seen. And so we've seen that transpire publicly. Then you had Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party being like, okay, let's do an opposition motion. Let's put the MOU down and or lift some words from the MOU and let's vote on it in the House of Commons. Who votes yes and who votes no on this MOU, the pipeline MOU? Let's see how it goes. So the initial wording was something along the lines of, we will support a pipeline to be built to BC within talking to indigenous peoples. And that was essentially all that was mentioned in it. And so that was floated in the media the day before the vote. And then that night, it was reported that the Liberal caucus was going to vote no to that motion. And all the critique from the media was the fact that they gave them an out. They didn't include everything from the MOU. So, of course, they gave them an out. It's like, well, that wasn't the exact words of our MOU. So we're going to vote no. Of course, it's easy. We're all going to vote no. Make it easy on you. And so the next morning, they hop in the House of Commons and they said, of course, we're not going to vote on this. This is the name of the words that we used. And then Poilievre's like, okay, yeah, you're right. Let's have some good faith then. We'll put everything in there. And they did include everything, including the carbon capture, the setup around the infrastructure around it. We'll put it all in. Yeah, we want to support this, except for they kept out the industrial carbon tax. And of course, Liberals still voted no. But there was all the chaos of like, are you not going to? And of course, as the Conservatives, they've been heavy against any type of carbon tax. So they couldn't really put that in because that would make them look bad. But at the same time, the point that Poilievre and the Conservatives are trying to make was that I believe is, first off, it was a sign to Canadians, but I think it was more a sign to the private industry that they will never part with that industrial carbon tax. Whether you think it's better or, as we all know, is worse for an industry, it's worse in terms of attracting investment to our country. They're never leaving that. And so that's where a lot of the chaos was. And so you had the media that was branding this whole thing as some type of, what were they calling it? A joke, essentially, that, Poilievre and Conservatives are just doing this, trying to, they're making a mockery of Parliament and trying to waste time. And that's really all they had, because the Liberals have been completely disjointed over this issue internally. And they are not unified in messaging on this whatsoever. Twice in the past 2 days, Carney, I think, pulled Guilbeault out of a scrum. Single-handedly pulled him out of a scrum, took him out. Today, did the same thing with Mark Miller. Ripped him out of a scrum, trying to keep him from talking to the media. Like, this is not a sign of a party that knows and is on the same page. And the Conservatives know it, and the Liberals are completely divided on this. And that's essentially was all the hubbub around this opposition motion, was the Conservatives were trying to pull a move to show how divided this Liberal Party was or is.
Do you think that, going back to Justin Trudeau,
yeah,
my view on Trudeau has always been the same. he was never like a guy with vision or any real idea for the country. He was just a puppet.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he was installed really because of name recognition. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people in our country who are too stupid to see beyond that. And, you know, somebody said to me once, and this is the best way to describe him, you could put a pebble in his ear and hear it rattle around inside his skull. There was just nothing in there. He's a total empty vessel.
Right.
But he was perfect for what they wanted to do, for what they wanted to introduce, because he would do the things and say the lines as long as he became wealthy beyond his wildest imagination. And he left the PMO with a net worth of anywhere between $70 to $400 million. That's a lot of money in 10 years at $400,000 a year. I mean, I don't know.
Those investments must be crazy, man.
Right? You know what I mean? Like when you start with a net worth of roughly 7 million and you end with a net worth of upwards of 400 million. So, I don't know, man. My math tells me $400,000 a year times 10 is 4, not 400, right?
Dude, he went to the school of Nancy Pelosi, man.
But what's interesting about Trudeau, and through my conversations with Sam Cooper and other people, was that once he was installed, he was surrounded by this inner Laurentian elite cabal, people like Dominic Barton, people like Michael Sabia, people like Mark Wiseman, Mark Carney, right? To kind of control the government from the shadows, it would appear. Now, we have Mark Carney, who was one of the shadows, leading our country. But what it looks like to me is that the group of theater kids that they put around Justin Trudeau to kind of push this extreme left ideology and force that square peg through that round hole in this country now are more of a hindrance to a guy like Mark Carney than they were a help to Justin Trudeau. And that's what it looks like to me, that this is a guy who, he's evil. Don't get me wrong. He's evil, but he's very competent, very smart, and he's surrounded by idiots. Does it look that way to you as well? Like he's struggling with this cabinet because they're all idiots?
Yeah. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head where during the Trudeau era, they surrounded Trudeau, and Trudeau surrounded himself with Trudeau is so arrogant, right? And he couldn't possibly have anyone around him that may have been smarter than him, at least publicly. Mm-hmm. So he kept bringing on people that were dumber than him. So of course you're going to have like a low level, low IQ caucus. And so now, you know, Carney inherits these people, and he's just like, well, these useful idiots were great for the Trudeau days, but dang, this is not working out. They're making me look terrible. They're making me look bad, you know. Now, you know, it's shooting himself in the foot over this. And, you know, he brought in like Tim Hodgson, who is a part of that group, of course, and he's a little bit more competent in front of the cameras. Almost, he shows his colors maybe a little too much, you know, mocking Indigenous peoples and stuff like that. But I think you're right. That's exactly what we're seeing right now. Is he's like, shoot, these people can't talk. I can't let these people talk anymore.
Yeah.
No. And this is actually a point I even saw. I can't remember the interview. I was watching a podcast where you can see it across the West right now, where the global elite have just been like, you know what, screw the puppets. We're just going to install our people right into positions of power. And we're seeing it with Mark Carney right now. We're seeing it with the chancellor in Germany, former BlackRock dude. You have Macron, who's a former investment banker with Rothschild. Then you have Mark Carney, Goldman Sachs, Brookfield, all of that. Mark Wiseman now potentially being our ambassador to the United States of America, who's also former BlackRock exec. It's just like, oh, baby, it's a hostile takeover. And he is doing his best to try and surround himself with all of these types of people and just trying to manage the gong show that was actually elected. And he's, as I said, he's got 5 or 6 people that are looking to lead his caucus, and he's going to call an election come late spring, early summer to cover for the fact that all these people are going to be leaving, and he doesn't want to have 5 or 6 by-elections under his belt.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine somebody like Mark Miller or Melanie Joly surviving in a room with him.
No, not a chance. We saw Melanie Joly, like, Dude, it was funny, man. Like, can we just talk about this for 2 seconds?
Yeah. Go.
The House of Commons the other day, she was wearing that like army outfit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Air Force Barbie. Force Barbie.
Yeah, that's what it was. And she wasn't doing herself any favors, dude. She kept doing this. Kept putting her arm out right and everything. I was like, I don't think that's the luck you want to be given. And she got memed to death over that. But I'm like, it's these people, man, that are just like, they're so out to lunch. And this is why the Conservative Party keeps eating them up in committee and stuff, is because they just, quite frankly, they're just not smart people. Whereas Conservative Party has, on average, more competent people than the Liberal Party does. And then that's why Mark Carney behind the scenes is like, frig, man, these committees are a disaster. They're a disaster.
Yeah, right.
So yeah,
like here's the thing about Mark Carney. Like, for people who are unaware, because he has so many titles, he's a World Economic Forum board member.
Yeah, baby.
Right, like he's right at the top of the globalist mountain. You know, that's who we have as our prime minister. That's why we're seeing all of the things that we're seeing. So again, evil, but cunning.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he has to deal with Air Force Barbie. You know, did you see the interview that she did with Vasi when they were talking about the economy and the new jobs created?
Yeah.
And Vasi's like, yeah, but you lost like X percent of jobs. She just kept repeating, yes, but we created 70,000 new jobs. And like, it's like she's a robot malfunctioning, like she's slowly burning out. And Vasi's like pressing her. And and I think like in the Trudeau era, these people were used to being able to sit in front of a microphone and just say whatever. And the legacy media, CBC and others would just eat it up and just go for it. But I think legacy media, for all its faults, is starting to wake up and realize that they've lost the majority of the public. So they need people like Vasi out there really putting the gears to people. Doesn't mean it's happening constantly or even often, especially when it comes to CBC, but it does happen from time to time. They do appear to be at least providing some little bit of substance for people who are paying attention. And now you have this guy in Mark Carney, this Mr. Burns type figure, who has to deal with this. Yeah. It's like he's in a daycare and he's surrounded by toddlers.
So true.
You know what I mean? Like Mark Miller, like I see, for me, like I have grown increasingly skeptical over the last couple of years when it comes to independent media, because I've seen things routinely misrepresented in independent media. Mm. But Mark Miller, in that House, I think it was a House committee hearing, where he said that certain verses from the Bible would be considered hate speech under this new legislation. It is mind-blowing. Imagine if he said that about the Quran or the Bhagavad Gita or any other religious text.
Well, so I want to be a little honest on this too. Was, in fairness to him, he did say it about those texts in that same speech.
That's right. That's correct. Yes, you're right. Yes, you're right. Yeah. But still, right?
Yeah. Like it's terrifying.
It's horrifying and now imagine being Mark Carney, where your minister just said this. Or you know what? Let's even simplify this a little bit, because you did coverage, I think a few days ago or last week, of an immigration showdown in the House of Commons in Canada, where Michelle Rempel and the Liberal immigration minister. Now, guys, before we start, I have to preface this by saying this woman is the person who is in charge of our immigration policy in Canada. She's the one leading the charge. Can you talk about that exchange? Because it was incredibly revealing how utterly stupid this Liberal immigration minister, I don't know her name, so you'll have to put it out there, but can you just break down what happened and what was revealed in that exchange?
Absolutely. So Lena Diab is the individual that we're talking about, the immigration minister. And so that's been a huge critique of really any immigration ministers in our country under this Liberal government. You had Sean Fraser, you had Mark Miller, now you have Lena Diab. And it's been very fascinating that the fact they keep appointing people that are actually getting worse every time. Sean Fraser was terrible. Mark Miller was worse than him. And Lena Diab's just like, who? You're a character at this point. Who are you?
She sounds like Mickey Mouse, first of all. Like her voice, she sounds like Mickey Mouse on speed. But let's keep going.
And so that's the issue is she doesn't really know. She doesn't have, oh my gosh, there's so much going on this woman. So she's a Nova Scotia MP, right? And you know, we're in the midst of facing the greatest crisis of our lifetime, and Liberals went on vacation for 2 months. And so lots have been happening over the summer. Conservatives were doing a lot of work over the summer trying to get prepared for the fall session. And Michelle Rempel-Garner, you know, I'll be honest, I'll say about her, she's done playing games. She is over all of it. And all she did all summer was, you know, pulling up research, pulling things together, figuring out how she's going to attack the immigration minister and try to show that what they're doing is wrong. And she was trash talking Lena Diab on X all summer. Get ready, Lena. We're looking at this. Be prepared to protect yourself. We want to know, like, just once every 2 weeks, she'd throw some X post out there just like trolling her. And Lena Diab likely was out here on our white sand beaches out here in Nova Scotia, didn't know about any of it. Comes into the first session and gets smoked by Michelle in debate. And I was like, she's been trolling you all summer. Did you not realize what you're coming into? Like, she didn't even come prepared with answers. Just said, then got sat down, then had someone else have to answer for her. It was a joke. And so we saw that again happen a couple weeks ago where, you know, like Michelle's asking legitimate questions of like, all right, this actually came up in committee. So you brought in 674 immigrants to take on doctors' positions. You know, how our immigration system supposed to work is bring in people who we're a shortage of. Doctors, that sounds great. So you brought in 674 people. The question was asked, how many have you tracked where they've been, and have you made sure that they got lined up with jobs? The immigration minister, Lena Diab, says, I don't know. I don't know. What are we doing here? And then they asked the next Liberal MP, do you have any knowledge of this? Sorry, I don't have that information. You come into committee to talk about this issue and you don't have the information. And then Michelle just starts railing on Lena Diab because there was a Conservative MP who initially asked that question. Then Michelle comes in hot. And of course, the Liberal chair of this committee said to start off that committee session saying, let's be careful with what we share of this committee. People are in danger. And then Michelle's like, okay, how about this? I thought we were going to talk about that offline, but if you want to bring it in committee, then let's have a conversation about it. Then right off like a 6-minute script going off on this Liberal government and Lena Diab. It was ugly for a Liberal minister to have to listen to. So Michelle goes in on Lena, asking her a bunch of questions, and again, same thing, either word salad or just no answer at all, and seemed very unconfident of what she was doing. And so Michelle kept pestering her. And Lena Diab speaks up and says, pulls a Melanie Jolie. I mean, if you're going to keep talking over me, then like you can do that. You can not like my answers, but you got to at least let me finish. And Michelle's cut her off again. She's like, no, I just don't like your word salad. So I want you to give me a real answer. And Lena Diab looks up at her and says, well, I like my salad tabbouleh and fatouche. And Michelle was just like, what?
That made no sense. I know it was the best because she was like, all right, whatever. That made no sense. But
that was like the most odd thing I've ever heard any minister say in this committee. But anyways, we move on. And then that was it, man. Like Lena gave no answers of any substance that whole hearing. And then Michelle Rempel-Garner posts a photo Friday night at about 7 p.m. Eastern time of her at her laptop working with a plate of food beside her. And she just said, it's been a long week. And then you look at the plate. It's full of tabbouleh, fatouche, and a salad. Just trolling, again, Lena Diab. Michelle's been running circles around this woman. And as it goes back to our early point, man, Carney must be just like, oh my gosh. This is ridiculous.
Why are conservatives so much better at the internet than liberals?
I think part of it is so here's the thing is that's always been the joke in general where the left can't meme. And that's that. And then we're seeing it here too, whereas we're also seeing conservatives who there's no pressure on conservatives right now.
Yeah.
It's so easy to point out all the flaws in the Liberal Party. When you're on the defense and trying to protect all the lies and all the holes that are in your story, well, of course you're going to always be anxious. But if you're the one who's just like, I've got nothing to hide, I'm just going to poke out everything you're doing. It's so easy to meme and it's so easy to troll. And on top of that, you got guys like Jamil Javani. You have the likes of Andrew Lawton, Garnett Genus, Michelle Rempel Garner, who are on the younger side and just they're enjoying life. Sure, Michelle Rempel Garner's been around a long time, but the likes of Jamil Javani and Andrew Lawton, they're fairly new MPs, and they do not care anymore. They've seen what this Liberal Party's done, and they're over it. And I've talked to a couple different new MPs, and I asked them, I was like, they have such a different perspective on how Parliament should work than the old guard. And I've heard this on a couple occasions. Was, what's it like working with your Liberal counterparts? Like, you have to walk the same halls as them. You have to go to the same cafeterias. I'm like, what are those interactions like? And the one thing I consistently hear from these new Conservative MPs is, I'm not here to be their friend. I've seen what they've done to our country, and I'm not letting them off the hook. And like, that new attitude and that fresh blood is really is feeding this Conservative Party right now. I loved how you brought up at the beginning of the show, like, hey, are you still going to be, critical of the Conservative Party once they get in, or even if they're doing things? And I'll be honest, I've sat here on my live stream with my buddy Reg since April, and we've been very critical of the Conservative Party, things that they should be doing, but they weren't. And they kept playing not to lose. Over the past 2 months, holy crap, they've turned their game up a notch. And man, the Liberals are in complete disarray. And the Conservatives, they're enjoying their lives. And I'm like, this is all we've been asking, is just be authentic, be real, put your foot on the gas pedal, and don't let them off the mat. And that's exactly what they've been doing. The fact that Andrew Lawton and Larry Brock showed up to the Bill C9 committee meeting today with their holy Bibles in front of them and said, boom, what are you going to do about that? It's just saying, screw you. We are going to keep fighting for our constituents. I don't give a crap what you have to say and what you call us in the process.
Yeah. And, seeing all this young, fresh blood in the Conservative Party is really, even for myself, who's as cynical as anyone and as cynical as I've ever been, it is very promising, to see, right? You do have young guys like Jamil Javani who, he's got a very long career ahead of him. And a lot of them appear to be coming from the same place that people like you and I are coming from, where it's not about partisan politics. It's about right and wrong. It's about not taking people's freedom away, whether that's freedom of mobility, freedom to communicate, freedom of speech, whatever. It's about making Canada a truly free country once again. And so it is very promising. Like Michelle Lanceman, for example, like, she is as sharp as a tack, right? Like these people are, these young Conservatives appear to be coming from more of a libertarian angle, right? Now, you touched on it briefly, and I kind of want to dive into this with you before we run out of time here. Pierre Poilievre, he's still the Conservative leader. There was a lot of speculation that he was going to be ousted in this next leadership review, but it appears like he's comfortable and moving forward where he is. Now, going into this last election, it really felt in the early stages like he had it wrapped up. Like, there was nothing Justin Trudeau could do to stop that big rig coming straight for him. Trudeau gets taken out. Mark Carney parachuted in. Elbows Up is born. And the parallels between Pierre Poilievre and President Trump in the United States are drawn, which, for guys like me and you, I'm like, yes, of course, because Trump is a populist figure. Pierre Poilievre is a populist. That's what they have in common. That's where you're seeing the resemblance. But Pierre, at the last minute, took this sudden, left turn back into establishment politics and abandoned his populist platform, which I truly believe is what lost him the election. Do you feel the same way? Do you share the same perspective on this?
100%. Yep.
Yeah.
It was very clear. It goes back to the point you said, like, they were playing not to lose. Like, Pierre was on he was able to be himself leading up to all of that. Then the Trump stuff hits, and you could tell like the apparatus that was behind him panicked, and he panicked with them. Mm-hmm. And there's like, okay, I guess we just gotta like semi-hate Trump, I guess, to be able to get any votes from the moderates. And they fell into the exact same trap that they fell into the first 2 elections beforehand. Or even 3. Actually, I'll leave the Stephen Harper one, the 2015 out of it. The first 2, the 2 ones. The one with Andrew Scheer, the one with Aaron O'Toole. It was always we're trying to win over the moderates. And then they just abandon conservative principles. And then they kind of just like displease everybody in the process. And Poilievre ended up doing something similar in this election as well. And that was what the unfortunate situation of it all was. I remember hearing about it and heard from different circles that I think I got this from solid sources that Poilievre showing up on Joe Rogan was all about going to happen. Then all of a sudden it didn't. And it was clear to me at that point that the apparatus behind him had completely panicked, and they said, we can't do anything with the United States. We're going to lose this election. I'm like, well, you're going to lose the election regardless, it seems like at this point, right? And this was actually, I brought this up to him in my interview with him, was during a similar situation that had happened. Liberals were on the fence. They're about to lose, and they swapped out leaders. And as they're about to go through their liberal leadership race, Brian Mulroney, at that time, got the permission from Trudeau to go down and meet with Reagan at the White House. He wasn't the prime minister. He was the leader of the opposition. But it was during a similar situation where Reagan was threatening tariffs on Canada. It was going to upend industry. And he went down and talked to Reagan and looked like a prime minister. Mm-hmm. That was one thing I asked Poilievre. I was like, could that have been a missed opportunity? Could you have just said, you know what, you guys, can you screw around with your stupid little election of you guys trying to pull this crap? I'm going to go actually help our country and go talk to Trump and see what we can make happen here and what we can do to steady the ship. And the point he did make there, he's like, well, the difference with me is Trudeau would never have given me permission to go do that. And I would have now been, caught in a rock and a hard place of like, now I'm acting out of essentially as a second government almost. So that would have been really, from like a legal perspective, it could have been rough. And so to that, I understand. However, he could have done what our politicians should have been doing, where you had, you had Carney, you had Ford, Danielle Smith was doing this too, was they're all hopping on like cable news down in the States to try and like make their case. That was a moment, man. I was like, nah, like, sure, you can go on the cable shows, for sure. You need to go on the shows that Trump's base are actually watching. Mm-hmm. Go on Tim Pool's show. Go on Crowder's show. Spooky. I know it's spooky, but go on there. Like, go on all the shows that the MAGA listeners are actually, or the followers are actually watching, and go make your pitch there.
Yeah.
But they didn't. They even go on American networks. They're too scared. And that's why I said that they were playing not to lose.
It appears that the Canadian political media experts, I put that in quotes because they're not experts. They live in a completely separate universe.
Right.
Joe Rogan isn't an American commentator. He's a global commentator. He's the biggest on earth. Mm-hmm. Like if Pierre Poilievre wanted to speak to Canadians, Joe Rogan is as big a bullhorn as you're ever going to get.
Right. Not
just the podcast episode itself, but the people clipping down the episode, all of the clips that would circulate the internet. He would have sewed it up. And this is the thing what bothers me about, and I know he fired his media manager after this last election. So hopefully the next person is a little bit smarter. But what bothers me is that the conservatives are very bad at politics. Like, very bad. The liberals are very good because they'll lie, cheat, steal, manipulate, do whatever they have to do in order to maintain power. And that's why the liberals generally are in power in Canada most of the time. Because the conservatives, although I'm sure there's enough lying, cheating, manipulating, and stealing within that party, they are still beholden to their base in a way where they have to at least present some form of honesty.
Yeah.
Whereas the liberals don't, because their voting base, I think, approves of the maneuvers and the manipulations and the different tactics that they use. And so with a guy like Pierre Poilievre, like, where his popularity rose to prominence and how the steam that was behind him all came from like these viral videos of him standing on the side of the road talking to protesters, you know, telling them that, you know, Trudeau's full of shit. Just the offhand, candid moments were what endeared people to him. And what really, really troubled me was toward the end of that campaign, we got all these, you know, produced campaign videos. Like the one that always stands out in my mind is the one where, you know, he's walking through the cabinet with McDonald's bags or walking through one of the offices, you know. And the thing is I come from the world of film. I know how they got that shot. That's a very difficult shot because the whoever's holding the camera has to dolly out. And it's holding a steady cam. So they more than likely had to do it 2 or 3 times because if the camera guy even stumbles a little bit, it screws up the shot. Point is that it was all overproduced, and that's what lost the potential first-time voters, because I know that there were a lot of people mobilized to vote for Pierre Poilievre based on his populist platform, who he may have lost, especially young people, when he turned back into the establishment political guy and tried to play the liberal game that the liberals destroy the conservatives on every single time.
Yeah.
The media game, right? So I guess, Josh, in closing, because I don't want to hold you too long. I know you got like 5 episodes of Elev8 to produce every single day, which is unreal. I don't know how you do this every day, brother.
Just two. It's all good.
But going forward, what does Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives need to do over the next 6 months to reinstill faith in people like me who feel more politically homeless than ever?
What they've been doing in committee over the past few weeks, do continue doing that. What they've been doing in the House of Commons, continue doing that. They need to fight the temptation to, as you said, do things that are overly polished. Just go be raw, be authentic, get in the mess. My podcast partner here brought this up on our live stream the other night. This is something that we're advocating for the Conservatives to do this. Take some of that party money and go run food drives in Sault Ste. Marie right now. Go to these places where people are losing their jobs due to these tariffs and Carney's lack of action on these tariffs. And go be with the people. Don't go for the photo op, because people will take photos themselves. They'll take videos themselves. Go be raw. Go be authentic. Go sit with the people and hear their pain. Hear what they're going through. Hear what they're trying to fight with. Hear the fact that they can't afford a Christmas dinner for their family because they're going to lose their job. Just sit with them, talk with them. Don't bring your handlers. Don't bring your media people. The people will film it for themselves and let that go viral. You go be authentic and go sit with people in their pain and go show that you are a helping hand and a listening ear in a time where the government is clearly not listening to them at all. And that's how they can continue to execute on these issues, because the liberals are going to continue tripping over themselves. They're going to continue messing up, and you got to be there to be the listening ear to the people that are feeling disenfranchised by this government. That's what they need to do.
Agreed. You know, I had an hour-long private conversation with Aaron O'Toole. And at the end of the conversation, I left thinking to myself, if only this was the guy that campaigned. You know,
interesting.
He was the right guy at the wrong time. And he is privately, one-on-one, incredibly insightful, charismatic, wise, understands geopolitics, you know, to a degree that I don't think Justin Trudeau, if there were 10 of him cloned, could ever even aspire to grasp. And I get the same sense with Pierre Poilievre. I mean, I know you've interviewed him. Behind the scenes, does he seem to you to be a guy who, do you have that same feeling where, like, if the political theatrics were dialed back and Pierre Poilievre, the human being, were turned up, do you think he would appeal more to voters that way?
I'll answer by saying this. We had our interview with him and he left our studio, and me and Reg looked at each other and was like, him on camera was very different talking to him off camera. And you can tell Poilievre goes into like show mode as soon as the cameras go on. But when he's off camera, he is so warm, incredibly fun to talk to, very lighthearted. But as soon as cameras go on, steel gaze, we're going to talk about all the issues the liberals have been doing, causing issues in our country. It's like, oh, I mean, true. We need to hear that for sure. But I was like, oh, I was really enjoying the guy I was just talking to before the cameras went on. And he genuinely is a really good guy. But I understand where he's coming from, because he's so frustrated by what he's seeing. It comes out so much when he's in front of the cameras. The liberals then take that and say, look, this guy's just so impersonal. He hates everybody. It's just like, yeah, but if you understood where that came from, that's that. However, I actually go back to something Nick Nano said and this is the first time I really agreed with anybody from the establishment on this issue, was he said, you can say what you want, that Poilievre needs to soften himself, he needs to be more himself, whatever. Sure, maybe. He doesn't need to change. What he needs to do is he needs to start pushing all these MPs and showing Team Poilievre, Team Conservative around him, and pushing the Michael Barretts, Jamil Javanis, the Andrew Laughtons, who are a little bit softer and a little more human, at least that comes more natural to them in front of the cameras, and show them that this is going to be a team effort. This is not going to be a dictatorship like Mark Carney is running the Liberal Party right now. And so I think that would be the key. Is I'd actually prefer Poilievre not to change, because I think that'd just be too much for him, too much of an adjustment right now where we have such a finite amount of time. I think the focus was what they are doing is push the other MPs and get them in the spotlight and soften that image a little bit of people around him, showing that no, these are the people that are actually very well and are awesome, are competent, and will do a very good job. And Poilievre does listen to these people. So,
yeah. Now, final question before we get out of here. We touched on a number of topics. I would love to have you back, Josh, to kind of dive deeper into some of these topics, like the immigration thing. I really want to go into you with you on. This country is dealing with a lot right now, and we have a lot coming at us by way of digital IDs and immigration catastrophe that is literally ruining every aspect of our infrastructure, our economy, everything. We have a sagging economy. We have a memorandum of understanding we did for Alberta and the pipeline project to try to get our economy at least sputtering again. That appears to be being held up for a number of reasons. So are you confident? I mean, you kind of answered this question, but are you confident in the Pierre Poilievre and this current group of conservatives that they have Canada's best interest in mind, and that they'll be able to turn the ship around?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Just in closing, the one thing about the Pierre Poilievre Trump thing that was really disappointing to me was that either it was he or his media people. I would assume it was his media person who didn't read the room, because really what he should have said is, yes, me and Donald Trump overlap on a lot, but that's why I'm the right guy for you to hire to go down and talk to him. Mark Carney's not going to be able to negotiate this deal. I can, because I think like him and I understand him. That was the message he needed to send. And instead, they did the opposite. They tried to distance themselves from the United States as much as possible. And in the end, it hurt them. Right?
Yeah. And that's the other thing, too, I find funny. I'll just throw this in, too, which I do find hilarious, where they really did try to distance Poilievre from Trump. Yet their campaign manager at the time had a photo floating around social media and the internet with her with a MAGA hat on. So it's just like, hey, that's a tough sell. I'll be honest, trying to distance yourself is a tough sell. I'll say that. But yeah.
Well, with Trump or with Poilievre, the thing is when he's honest, when he's off the cuff, when he's the guy that you saw off camera, people relate to him. Yeah, I did. He was the first politician in this country in a very long time that I was actually excited about, because I saw that he was a real person. And, I didn't buy into the anecdotes that he would use in media interviews. Like, there's the single mother with 3 kids who can't even afford to put spaghetti on her table. And that's why, I didn't buy that shit. What I bought into was when he was talking to people one-on-one and just saying, like, look, we're in a lot of trouble. We need to fix this. And I have a plan, and I think I can get us out of this. But what was obvious to me was that he recognized what the problems were. Right. And that was the first step, because we have a Liberal Party who has been in power for 10 years who pretend there's no problems at all.
Yeah.
Right. Anytime, the sheer number of people in line at food banks, and, the huge boom in cheap labor that entered this country, and the lack of real jobs for Canadian citizens, anytime those things come up, they just, they're like Neo in the Matrix, right? Like bullet time. But it's like, at least Pierre Poilievre is willing to attack these issues and discuss them. Yeah. And I get it. He's coming at it from an offensive position, but at least he's willing to talk about it. And that's what I liked about him, is that he's willing to actually approach it and acknowledge that it exists. Whereas the Liberals are just in this delusional fantasy world where nothing's wrong.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, and if I'm being honest, I think we're going to start seeing more of the Poilievre you loved. I think we're starting to already see hints of it, where we saw it at the parliamentary press gallery dinner, where he's like, he's going to be willing. From what I'm seeing on the ground, and the different things they're doing, I think you're going to start seeing more of the real Poilievre come out anyways. And it's just like right now, that's why I'm the part of me is really bummed that there's gonna be a Christmas break, because the whole party right now is firing on all cylinders and the Liberals are just reeling right now. The only thing they're holding on to is the fact they have some control over the narrative in the mainstream, so people still believe they're doing something, but that's not going to last much longer. And they're lucky they get a 6-week break, I'll tell you that much, because they're getting smoked right now.
Yeah, well, I hope, I really hope that we're able to fix at least some of this. With these the digital ID is the main thing that's concerning me right now, because that is the end, right? And that is we can go into that in another conversation, but that is a much bigger issue than I think most Canadians understand.
Yep, 100%.
But Josh, I know you got to jump back in and record something else for your 50th episode today. So tell everybody where they can find you, man.
You can find me on the Elev8 Podcast, on X, on Instagram, on Facebook. Yes, Facebook. You can find us there. I'm on also TikTok, but the grand tamale of them all is on YouTube, the Elev8 Podcast. I know some of you were very irritated that I covered the amazing interview that Jason James had done with Sam Cooper. But it was all just in good fun, because I thought it was a fantastic interview, and I thought it had to be covered and people needed to know about it. So I wasn't trying to steal anything, I promise.
No, dude, that's what brought us together.
I think he's a great guy.
So all you guys who emailed me and DM'd me like, fuck that guy, he stole your shit. You guys brought us together, because I reached out to you to say thank you. Because guys, what you got to understand is the more we cross-pollinate, the more we introduce each other's audiences to each other, it just helps each other grow, right? So like, if somebody wants to do commentary or clip up an interview that I did, I'm more than happy for that, because all it does is it brings me to his audience. So all you guys out there who were like, fuck that guy, fuck Elev8 Podcast, you are the reason why this happened. So thank you guys. All right, my brother. Well, listen, man, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. I want to bring you back in here sometime in January, February, whenever you have time between your multiple episodes. But I think that there's a lot for us to explore here. We just kind of grazed the surface today, and I really want to dive deeper in with you. But for now, my brother, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate you stealing my stuff.
Hey, no problem, man. Anytime.